which is utterly ridiculous. The rogue is an absolute badass. Your class kind of determines your skills, but not really your fighting style. For example, I could very easily give the rogue a greatsword or a warhammer. You know, he still gets his sneak attack, but he just hits slower, or he has like a different feel to him. You can do that with every class. The only two that are remotely similar really are the barbarian and the fighter. The fighter specialises in having endurance that regenerates all the time, even in combat, which means he's kind of got a constantly regenerating shield against his health getting damaged, which makes him a great frontline fighter. You know, he can knock down the enemy, he can take on multiple targets at once and guard the group. Makes him a very useful one to have. Whereas the barbarian focuses more on the DPS side of things with his carnage ability, and that hits everybody within melee range for like I think it's half damage of what he does to the main target. Again, he can dual wield, he can have one-handed weapon and shield, just one-handed weapon, you know, a big two-handed staff or two-handed sword. And each weapon also influences your fighting style. Because what happens with your fighting style is you get a different bonus depending on how you're equipped. But they're quite general. You know, if you're dual wielding, it doesn't matter if you've got two daggers or a sword and a dagger or an axe and a sword or two axes. The bonus is the same in that you attack faster. But if you have one weapon and no shield, you get 15% extra accuracy, I believe. And if you have a weapon and a shield, you get a bonus to defense, of course from the shield. And a big two-handed weapon gives you a bonus to interrupting the enemy, and thus slowing down their next attack. But enough about that. We're going to go with a wizard here. They fling magical bolts out of their staff, as well as casting spells. I've not played one of these guys yet. I've not played a druid either, but, you know, whatever. These guys have crap stats. Like, if these guys get into melee combat, they are dead within seconds. But they kind of have a spell book, just like in D&D. You have this thing called a grimoire. You can only equip 4 spells of each level in your book. So I can have 4 level 1, 4 level 2, 4 level 3, so on. And you can if you pick up an enemy wizard's grimoire, you can learn spells from them as well. So I'm kind of going to go with pretty basic stuff, like things to deal damage here. Let's not bother about that. So what I'm looking for is something that will actually sap endurance from enemies, like that parasitic staff there. It turns me into a melee attacker for 45 seconds, but it allows me to regain health, regain endurance, which is kind of like a shield to your health, in combat. Jolting touch and minor missiles are just basically very basic damage dealing attacks, and I've got a 4th one I can pick here. Hobble enemies in an area of effect. I don't think I want that. Oh, spirit shield. Increased damage reduction and concentration bonus. Yeah, let's go with that, because if I get sucked into melee, I can cast that on the staff and kind of become like a very crappy fighter. And here we come to the attribute points. These aren't entirely self-explanatory. Like, you glance at these as a D&D player, or someone who's familiar with D&D, and you can think, oh yeah, it increases my damage. It's my strength, right? Not entirely. I mean, yes, it does contribute to the damage you deal, but it also contributes to extra spell damage, not just physical damage. Like, might contributes to all your damage dealing. And your fortitude defense resists things like poison, etc. Like the same kind of things it resists in D&D. So I'm going to dump a bunch of points in that. Let's give it 15. As you can see, you get like 3% per point you put in there. Bonuses. Constitution is literally more health and more resistance to poison. Not very important for the wizard since he's not supposed to get hit anyway. So let's just leave that at 11. Dexterity rather, is how quickly you can act in combat. This is how long your basic attack will take to cycle, how long a spell will take to cast. Everything has a base speed, and points in dexterity will boost that speed. So we're going to pump that up to 15. That also gets me reflex, which is used for dodging AoE attacks. So if an enemy flings a fireball or an oil slick or whatever, dexterity is what will let me resist that. Perception is your ability to exploit an enemy's defenses. One sec. You alright? Just a second. Sorry about that. Okay, where was I? Yeah, perception. This is your ability to dodge damage. Deflection dodges direct attacks, whether they're ranged or melee. These are things like sword swings, arrows shot at you, a basic magic bolt from my wizard scepter, that kind of thing. Interrupt is, as I said earlier, your ability to push back the enemy's action. We're going to leave that at 10 because I'm a wizard, I shouldn't be getting hit anyway. Intellect. This boosts your magical and talents. I want to say spells and skills. It boosts your spells and skills basic stats. So it gives you bonuses to area of effect, the length. You know, this is good for even a barbarian to have high intellect. Oh, excuse me. Because a barbarian can go into a fury, and a high intellect will allow them to sustain that fury for longer. It'll also allow them to resist things like mind controlling effects or stunning effects from magic spells. So because this is really important, I'm going to pump that up to 15 as well. And resolve is another one that just basically buffs your basic defenses. This I don't really like. I never really put much points into resolve. I mean, it boosts your concentration, which is your ability to resist being interrupted, but it only gives you minor bonuses to the others, so it's not really worth sinking that many points into for this particular class. In fact, I'm just going to leave it as it is and put 1 point into perception to use up that last point, and we'll go from there. Now, with that done, we get to pick what culture we come from, our homeland. This influences your starting equipment. For the fighter classes, for example, you'll see bigger differences in, like, for example, you might have a spear if you come from Ixamital, but you might have a great sword if you come from Old Valor, or you might have a sword and a shield, or a rapier and a shield. But for the wizard, it basically just changes their starting armor, which will affect how quickly they can regenerate things like endurance, and recover from effects. So I want something rather light. Preferably something that also gives me a bonus to one of the wizardly abilities. I don't want that big armoured plate chest. I mean, sure, it's expensive, and it'll give me a lot of damage reduction. I don't want that one either. Let's go with the Living Lands. It's kind of like the elven kind of... It's just sort of like a free land, like everybody kind of does their own thing and just lives in peace there. Very varied terrain as well. And with that, this is based off of your stats and where you're from. You get to choose your background, and this will give you a bonus to one of your skills. Skills are things like survival, athletics, law. There's only 5 or 6 of them, but they encompass all the different game systems. So we don't really need athletics because we're not going to be doing a lot of combat, so we're not going to be becoming fatigued. So what we want really is a lot of law. In fact, let's go for scientist and have law and mechanics. We got that from having a high intellect and I think perception. There's some basic ones like merchant and explorer that are always in there. Not many customization options, especially not for this race. But you usually got like 3 heads, like 20 different hairstyles. If you're a guy, you get a bunch of facial hair. You can also choose the colour of your armour. Let's make him bright red just for shits and giggles. There we go. It's a fire guy wearing bright red, woohoo! The 3rd head for the death godlike is amazing. It's like a giant red demon helmet. It's so cool. Let's just stick with the basic head. I like those 2 horns. And with that we get to pick our portrait. There's 66 of them, 33 for men, 33 for women. The female ones seem to be more encompassing than the male ones. Like there's a lot missing from the male ones, like the varied heads and stuff. But whatever. I mean, this one's close enough. And let's make him someone noble.
Leading the way. Charge!
Yeah, sounds good. He's a badass wizard. Okay, and he will be called Frank. Frank the Wizard. There's no narrator to the actual text, like you've got to read these bits. But when important characters speak, like this character, Master Edema, there'll actually be voiceover for his actual words. So I'm going to shut up and let that play.
Everybody stays close to the wagons, got it? Stay out of the woods, and beasts take you if you were planning a stroll through those ruins up there.
He nods towards a looming black mass on the hillside.
Whole area's crawling with hut-dwelling types who'd be happy to stick an axe in you for trespassing. So mind that you don't track mud on their sacred blazing rocks. Tonight, everybody stays put, and in the morning we'll get the path clear. Gilded Vale's less than a day out. Understood?
At last, the caravan master turns to you, frowning as he looks you over.
Touch of the rumbling rot, could be. There's a stinging beetle round here, carries it. You'll be fine once it passes your innards. Unless you don't drink water, of course. In which case you'll be dead in a day.
Basically I got the shits from a bug bite.
There's a berry grows in these parts, small and pink, called a springberry, about the size of a fingernail. Give you cramps if you eat it, but the frontiersmen make a tea from it. Calms the insides. Should get you through the night. You might check around, see if you can find some. Meanwhile, I'll see if we can scare you up some water. I know you want to hunt before it gets much darker, but see about refilling our water first.